Goeiedag en welkom by die Oordenking. Ons is besig met 'n reeks oor die Bybel. Ons is 'n 4 weke reeks tydens ons Sondag oor Bybel. Wat is die Bybel? Ons gaan stories uit die Bybel uithaal en die rede daarvoor is dat ek en jy weer 'n honger moet ontdek vir die Bybel. Dit is in ons huise beskikbaar, is oral beskikbaar en is op ons fone ook, maar daar's tog net iets anders om dit op die papier te lees en notas te maak en daarna te kyk. Nou vandag kyk ons bietjie na wat is die Bybel en daar is dit gister ook al afgeskop hierdie week. En die volgende paar weke gaan ons tydens die oordenkings gebruik ons The Bible Project. Nou die Bible Project is 'n klomp mense wat die Bybel op 'n maklike manier verduidelik. En hierdie week is nou ongelukkig Engels, maar daarna is al die video's in Afrikaans. En ons gaan vandag bietjie daarna kyk oor wat die Bybel is en waar dit bestaan. So vir nou, kyk eers gou saam na hierdie video.
The Bible. It's one of the most influential books in human history.
It explores the big questions of why we exist.
It's inspired many people to do amazing things.
And confused many others.
And you've probably got one sitting around somewhere.
So, what is the Bible actually?
Well, the Bible is a small library of books that all emerged out of the history of the people of ancient Israel. And in one sense, they were just like any other ancient civilization. But among them were a long line of individuals called prophets. And they viewed Israel's story as anything but ordinary. They saw it as a central part of what God was doing for all humanity. And these prophets were literary geniuses.
Really?
Yeah, they expertly crafted the Hebrew language to write epic narratives, very sophisticated poetry. They were masters of metaphor and storytelling, and they leveraged all of this to explore life's most complicated questions about death and life and the human struggle.
So, there's a lot of different authors writing this book.
Yeah, and these texts were produced over a 1,000-year period, starting with Israel's origins in Egypt, then leading up to their kingdom with their first temple, but eventually they were conquered by the Babylonians, who took them away into exile. Then, at a crucial moment in their history, many Israelites returned to their land. They built a second temple, they reformed their identity, and this is when the Jewish scriptures began to be formed into the shape that we have them today.
Okay, the Jewish Bible. What's in it?
Well, in Hebrew, it's called by an acronym, Tanakh. The T stands for Torah, sometimes called the Law. That's Israel's 5-book foundation story. The N stands for Nevi'im, the Hebrew word for prophets. And this section consists of the historical books that tell Israel's story from the prophet's point of view. Then you get the poetic books of the prophets themselves. The K stands for Ketuvim, the Hebrew word for writings. This is a diverse collection of poetic books, wisdom books, and more narrative. And the Jewish people believed that through all of these literary works, God speaks to his people.
Now, there were other Jewish writings being produced during this Second Temple period as well.
Yeah, a really diverse group of texts. And these too were highly valued in Jewish communities. And there was debate from ancient times about whether or not some of these should be considered part of their scriptures.
So, this is a lot of different writings over a long period of time. Why did they put them all together like this?
Well, altogether, these texts tell an epic story about how God is working through these people to bring order and beauty out of the chaos of our world. And it all builds up to a hope for a new leader who would come and renew all creation. And then the Tanakh concludes, and this leader never comes.
So it's an expertly crafted work, but it's missing an ending?
That's exactly right. Now, a few centuries later, a Jewish prophet comes onto the scene named Jesus of Nazareth. He claimed he was carrying the Tanakh story forward.
Yeah, so Jesus did a bunch of cool stuff, was killed, but his followers claimed he was alive from the dead.
Yeah, they said that Jesus was that long-awaited leader who would restore the world. And so his earliest followers, called apostles, they composed new literary works about the story of Jesus. They called these Good News, or the Gospel. They formed an account called Acts about the spread of the Jesus movement outside of Israel. And then they circulated letters to different Jesus communities all around the ancient world.
And they saw these writings as part of the scripture.
Yeah, the apostles wrote all of this as the fulfillment of that epic story found in the Tanakh. And they were continuing the literary genius of the Jewish tradition. They also believed that God was speaking to his people through these texts alongside the scriptures of Israel.
So that's the Old and New Testament. But what did the early Christians think of the other Second Temple literature?
Well, different groups had different views about some of these books, but we know they read them and valued these texts because they passed them along with the Jewish scriptures.
Okay, so we've got the Tanakh, the Jewish scriptures. We got these other Second Temple period works. Then the writing of the apostles about Jesus. And that's a lot of literature, so what's in my Bible?
So the Christian movement has taken different forms over 2,000 years, and from the beginning, all Christians recognized the Tanakh and the New Testament as scripture. And for centuries, much of the Second Temple literature was read as part of the biblical tradition. The Catholic Church eventually made it official and called some of the books from this collection the deuterocanonical books. Some Orthodox churches used even more books from this Second Temple literature. And then in the 1500s, during the Reformation, Protestant Christians wanted to go back to the oldest writings of the prophets and apostles, so they accepted only the Old and New Testaments.
Okay, I think I got it. But how does a collection of books produced over 1,000 years by all these different authors tell one unified story?
Yeah, that's the question we'll address in our next video.
Nou ek hoop jy het dit ook interessant gevind en net 'n paar gedagtes. God praat deur die woord, deur die Bybel met ons. Dis sy antwoorde wanneer ek en jy gedagtes het, wanneer die Heilige Gees iets binne ons losmaak, wanneer ons vra het, dan is dit in die Bybel, is haar antwoorde vir ons. En hoe wonderlik is dit dat dit vir duisende jare daar is en tog is dit van toepassing vandag. Dit is asof die Bybel laas week geskryf is, want dit is als dele wat jy lees en dink jy, maar hierdie is presies wat nou gebeur. Charles Spurgeon sê, nobody ever outgrows scripture. The book widens and deepens with our years. So God werk, hy praat deur die skrif, hy gebruik mense om vir ons dinge uit te lig en te verstaan oor wat dit is, maar dit is deur die Gees geïnspireerd. En verskillende mense daarin geskryf, oor die 40 auteurs het daarin geskryf, maar deur God geïnspireer. So ja, daar's dele wat jy nou kan vat en sê, maar daai deel sê hulle dit en dan sê hulle weer teenoorgestelde en dit maak my deurmekaar. Daarom moet ek en jy voor ons die Bybel oopmaak, eers bid en vra Heilige Gees breek hierdie vir ons oop. Want dit kan ook 'n gevaarlike boek raak wanneer ek en jy sommer net liekraak dit interpreteer en Bybelroulette speel. Jy vat sommer net die blaaie en kyk en dan gebruik jy sommer net 'n teksvers of stuur dit vir iemand. Ons moet regtig net so sensitief wees vir dit wat die Here met ons wil doen. Maar ek hoop jy het vandag geniet. Môre gaan ons weer aan en daar is gaan 'n bietjie vir ons kyk oor waaroor gaan die Bybel? Wat is die verhaal daarvan? Maar kom ons bid eers so saam. Here, dankie dat U vir ons U woord gelos het. U stem. Here, dit is so besonder as 'n mens lees in die Ou Testament hoe U hoorbaar met mense gepraat het en ons dink, wow, dit sou lekker gewees het. Maar hoe te meer het ons nie U stem en woorde vasgevang op bladsye wat ons elke dag, elke sekond kan lees, kan deurgaan, kan gaan weer lees. Dankie dat die Bybel lewendig is. Dat hierdie boek lewendig is en teksverse wat ons al vir jare lees, eintlik nie baie sin maak nie, tot jy deur 'n sekere omstandigheid gaan en dan beteken daardie teksvers soveel vir elkeen van ons. Ons prys U daarvoor en dankie dat U ons gebede verhoor en beantwoord deur dit. Mag ons 'n nuwe honger en 'n nuwe vuur in ons wakker word om U skrif, U woord te bestudeer en meer uit dit te leer. Bid dit in Jesus naam. Amen. Dankie dat jy vandag saam gekuier het. Kuier môre verder en ons leer so saam meer van die Bybel. Totsiens.